We have a guest speaker who is a original Buffalo soldier. Mr. George B. Edwards from Cathedral City, California. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone please stand. And he has a birthday next week. So give him another round of applause. I think it's going to be, how old are you going to be, sir?
92.
92 years young. And he was born in Indianapolis, Indiana.
1990.
Sergeant Owens, will you please bring him forward at this time?
Good people. Good afternoon. For me to be here today, talk to you people, let you know what a real Buffalo soldier, no good husband is like. I was born Friday, October 17, 1919, close to Indianapolis, next door to the Ku Klux Klan headquarters. Learn how to fight dirty. I was also a family of 20 children. So I really learned how to fight dirty. I did go in the military service, and the first week, my first pay period, I ended up in Mexican jail because some big guy passed by me and he was knocked out of the way, shorty. So I went upside his head with a chair. After I hit him, I went down on him. I made sure he'd have killed me. I went down, but the Mexican judge fined me $1.20 for the chair and sentenced me to overnight to cool off in the Mexican jail, which is about as high as this building here. And they only check it every Monday. So I was checked out Monday after and released. But from that battle with this big guy, I was offered a sergeantcy, the first week in the military. So I did make staff sergeant in 3 months, first sergeant in 9 months, 11 months I was a master sergeant, regimental sergeant major of the 369th Infantry, and then I went to officer candidate school when I got my commission and in commando, and ended up with the Buffalo Soldiers out of the 92nd. Now the 93rd Division with the blue helmet was by far the best trained military force you could find. They were from Washington, D.C., Cleveland, Indiana, and the other northern areas, and they didn't mind fighting. But the 92nd, which I ended up with, Buffalo, was all commanded by Southern officers. You know what that meant. all colored officers would be lieutenant, regardless of their position. Now, I'm here today to speak about something that happened that for 60 years, we've been censored not to talk about. And that is when Joe Louis's manager, Truman Gibson, came over as a representative of the United States government to watch a battle upon a hill in Georgia, in Italy. And when he went back, he wrote back and said, the black soldiers ran. They vanished, they ran. But we lived for 60 years with that stigma. We couldn't talk to soldiers, and also in San Diego area too, with the Marines and so forth, because they said we ran. Well, let's tell you, we did not run. But he just did not understand that the soldiers, which were regular army, were trained by by West Pointers, and we learned, the West Pointers learned from the British, who learned from the Watusis. And you've all seen movies of the battle with the large field of Watusi soldiers forming in lines and beating drums and dancing and smoking little everything and drinking little everything. But the thing was, what they were doing is they were digging holes in the ground in caves and planting troops. We learned from the Watusis 3 things about fighting: camouflage, concealment, containment. And therefore when we went to battle, we learned to use those tactics. We crawled on our belly, we jumped on our belly, and we shot them in the back. That's what the way the British were defeated by the Watusis on several occasions. The Germans also, on several occasions. But we learned from them how to fight. Well, the 92nd Division, being controlled by white officers, white generals, colonels, and so forth, believed in bravery of standing up and walking. There are 38,000 Poles burned in this big battle that we were in, that were killed climbing up the hill, standing up bravely. You know, they were strong, they were well trained, but there were so many more generals and colonels killed in the North Africa Italian campaign out of proportion to any others, that General Mark Clark was criticized severely. Well, we went through for all these years not being able to hold up our heads until the Korean War, and this speech is mainly for the Korean veterans. They're the generals there when lost about 30,000 Americans on that Chosin Reservoir. And when Truman tried to fire MacArthur for the battle, he refused to take the blame because he said that the soldiers fighting in that Chosin Reservoir fought like soldiers of the Civil War, standing up. Well, that relieved us of all the danger, all the damage by this Truman Gibson, that we were right and he was wrong. And I've got an article right here to prove what was said. But for 50 years, or 60 years just about, we couldn't go into veterans organizations and say much because they all said, you fought, you ran. We didn't. We used camouflage, concealment, and containment from the Watusis. And when Truman fired and tried to fire MacArthur, he refused to take the blame. And that relieved us of all the guilt that we had. Because I was very bitter for years, and I've been a widower for 58 years. But that relieved us of all that bitterness, because we knew then the truth, that Truman Gibson made a hell of a mistake. And today we can hold up our heads and prove that, yes, we did fight. And from that battle, it was the very beginning of the end of the Virginia Military Institute, or the Southern Generals. And I've been speaking a lot in Washington, D.C. and throughout the states all over the country, talking to primarily veterans of the Korean War, who were treated like dirt. But they were treated by generals and high-ranking officers who were Southern controlled. George C. Marshall was a Southerner VMI. So we had no choice but to fight like they wanted to fight. But I got the Purple Heart in March 8, 1945. And during that short period of time between January of 45 and May 8, 45, there were, as lieutenants, Bob Dole, Senator Indaway, George Mitchell, they were all lieutenants. Bob Dole was the second lieutenant, but I was the first lieutenant. And so, but I want to let you know that the bitterness is gone now, because we've seen Colin Powell and everybody else who went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and made it up. So just forgive us. And when they say we didn't fight, yes, we did fight.
Sergeant Andrew, please come forward and take it back to seat. Everyone, please rise. He said, "Don't forget my hat."
Yeah. All right.
One second. Before you sit down, you all please rise. The honor and respect according to due. Hand salute to you, sir, for your honor and your duty and your courage, and that you did fight. Ready, two.
Everyone be seated. Well, I'm glad I was in the Air Force. We flew. We weren't doing no fighting on the ground.
Yeah, we did some fighting.
We sitting up here, 4 guys to do all that.
We did a lot of fighting.
And my good friend, comrade Cleo Mentor, put some fuel on it. Gave us gas to go. At this time, ladies